Welcome to Tuesday, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Jeremy Cordeaux. Peter Clayton is behind the camera, and the Court of Public Opinion is in session. Thanks for being with us. I was noticing the dates because I pre-read them to see if there's anything that is going to be a problem. By a problem, I mean, not interesting enough. I think they're all interesting, frankly, because every day is a milestone for something or someone or some place. I thought that was interesting. We'll get to all of these in detail later. But the first women's magazine. Pete, when do you reckon the first women's magazine might have been published?
Well, I'm afraid I have no idea. No.
You want to take a guess?
1935.
1935. First women's magazine, 1935. Would you be astonished to know that the first women's magazine, which was called the Ladies' Mercury, was published in London on this day in 1693? 1693!
Did they have printing presses then?
Well, must have. They certainly didn't have the internet. 1693, good God. And when you think about magazines in this country, we were the largest consumer of magazines in the world. We had magazines for every niche interest you could think of, and a few, dare I say, that you couldn't think of. Oh, I'd be astonished if you did. Just amazing, the number of magazines. All of that has changed so radically in the last few years as to be truly amazing. Well, bankrupting for some people, in fact. Oh, the world has changed. I'm not even sure that it needed to change. Why do people suddenly sort of decide to move on from something that was such an important part of their lives? I remember my mother would wait for, I think it was every Friday, when the Women's Weekly was published. And God, it was about that thick. And God knows what the advertising cost. I know that Sir Frank Packer and Kerry Packer obviously made an enormous amount of money out of publishing women's magazines and special interest magazines. Anyway, I suppose it's all of a thing of the past. However, the wheel does turn and things do come back. Don't know. After the arrest, it's an interesting story. After the arrest of a New South Wales police officer, I'm not sure of his rank, but anyway, it was in connection with the murder of two gay men. One was a TV presenter and the other one was a flight attendant, with whom it is alleged he was involved. Well, with at least one. It's resulted in this interesting call, or suggestion, demand, don't know what you'd call it, for the police not to take part in the gay Mardi Gras, which is coming up. Now, my being kind of old-fashioned, I guess, I would say the police should never have been involved in the gay Mardi Gras in the first place. What was all that about? All people, gay, straight, men, women, black, white, rich, poor. Let's have a people's Mardi Gras. Huh? And stop with the dividing of society. Couldn't we do that? Have a people's Mardi Gras? I think they do in New Orleans, don't they, Pete? Isn't that just a general all-in kind of wonderful festival?
So. I believe so, yes.
Oh, listen, I don't mean to be personal, but could somebody please buy Amanda Rishworth a comb? Look, I mean no disrespect. But if I came to you on this humble little podcast or posting on Facebook, and I didn't take the time to run a comb through my hair and make sure I was clean shaved and looked presentable, I would be disrespecting you. I really would. But I would suggest that Amanda Rishworth wash her hair and comb it or brush it. You know, politicians used to be put through sort of I don't know what you'd call it, a boot camp or a knife and fork course in Canberra. It was sort of bizarre because you think they should know these things anyway, but they used to sit down and show them how to hold their knife and fork. I'm not joking. Now, we have a few, like Amanda here in South Australia. In the South Australian Parliament, I've made mention of it in the past. They just have no idea. It's called grooming. And I call it basically bizarre. I don't care what these lefties do in their private lives, or even if you're on the right or in the middle. I don't know and I don't care. But when you present yourself in public to address your employer, that of course is us, the voter, please look presentable. Take some pride. Another bad day for bushfires in Victoria, sadly, last week, and it's not over yet. Some more hot days ahead, windy as well. Isn't it time that we bit the bullet and spent the money? Yes, I know it would be expensive. Spent the money and undergrounded the power lines. Big job, but worth it. I reckon we could run a slide rule over that and prove that it's worth it. Here in South Australia we have something that would be unknown in other parts of Australia called Stobie poles. Interesting story. You can look up Mr. Stobie. Was a man called Stobie, which is why they're called Stobie poles. He invented them. What his background was, I'm not sure, but they consist of concrete laid between two iron rails. Iron and concrete. Most unforgiving if you happen to hit one, and believe me, they are everywhere. And they're also unsightly and dangerous. But Mr. Stobie, he was given a royalty. I think he worked for the government at the time of the invention, and the invention came about because when other states have telegraph poles made of wood, which we're familiar with, apparently there was a great white ant problem in South Australia, and they just simply chewed them up almost overnight. So they had to come up with something that the white ants couldn't demolish. And the answer was the Stobie pole. Anyway, Mr. Stobie got a royalty of so many cents for every single Stobie pole that either went up or is replaced, and yes, they still do replace them. When one falls over, and they do occasionally, they put up another one. And he's long gone to God, but his estate or his family get a royalty from every single Stobie pole around South Australia, of which there must be millions. Millions. Now, by undergrounding power lines, well, let's not gild the lily, we beautify our environment. Whether they're wooden telegraph poles or they're ugly old Stobie poles. And of course, the environment becomes safer, and you stop this nonsense with every bushfire season. Bushfires not only take lives, but cost the economy billions. I've never heard an environmentalist say a word on this subject, and they bloody well should. I think they are absolute ugliness, and we can do something about it. When you think of all the things we spend or waste money on. Brad Banducci, the former Woolworths CEO, Let's talk about that. He fell on his sword, announcing his departure on the day they proclaimed more than a 2% jump in profits to just under $1 billion. Not bad. Woolies shares dropped 6% on the news. Now, I can't figure that out. I'm sure his departure had something or a lot to do with the Four Corners train wreck interview on Monday night last week. Now, when he was employed there, he was being paid $8 million a year. How in God's name you could spend $8 million a year, I don't really know. He'll walk away with $24 million. For that sort of money, you would think, wouldn't you, that Woolworths would have invested something in media training or some crisis management people. You know, I did a bit of this myself. In fact, I have a company called Crisis Management. And it never ceases to amaze me. People sail along in blissful ignorance. Well, they take out insurance and do all sorts of things to safeguard, but they don't do something as bleeding obvious as crisis management training. Now, for him, the head of the company, to get up and try and walk out of an interview, or to suggest to this hard-bitten ABC bloke, hey, could we cut that bit out? The bit that he didn't want to have shown. I mean, that shows a remarkable level of inexperience or naivety. You should never see in a senior executive of a major public company, for God's sake. Woolworth's troubles probably began with their backing of The Voice with taxpayers. Well, it wasn't really taxpayers, was it? It was shareholder money. I'm sure they didn't run it past the shareholders. Whether you blame the CEO or you blame the board, I don't know. Then, of course, the refusal to stock Australia Day merchandise and then to stir up all that public resentment and ridicule to become Wokeworths instead of Woolworths in the media. Hey, listen, it's not that complicated. I mean, sometimes I refer to it as stick to your knitting. You know what I mean? Your business. Woolworth's business is the fresh food business, not the social commentary business. For God's sake. Oh, I don't know whether he was a good executive or not. I'll just leave it swinging in the breeze, I think. A drop in profits for Qantas, that's down 13%. A big drop ahead as they try to rebuild that stellar brand. I thought it might even be more than 13%, but anyway. Vanessa Hudson, who is the new CEO. Good luck, Vanessa. It is very hard and time-consuming to build a great reputation and brand, and it can be lost almost overnight. Eternal vigilance on the part of the CEO and the boards of directors of these companies, who should, and I'm sure in most cases do, value their brand and their reputation. The stock markets are positively perky. Now, I'm not sure how to pronounce. Is it Nvidia? Pete, have you seen the story?
I think it is, but I'm not 100%
Nvidia,
sure.
I think it's Nevida. Anyway, Nvidia, I'd never heard of it before. It's an AI, artificial intelligence company in America. It jumped an amazing, and we're talking in a day, 500%. A 500% jump on the stock market price. Now, this makes the company more valuable than the Australian GDP. Trillions of dollars. More valuable than Amazon. And up there in the top 5 of American companies that are achieving enormous results for their shareholders. But the question is, are these people onto something? Or is this some giant bubble? Beware of bubbles. When they burst, they usually take everything with them. Speaking of bubbles, nickel, once the new El Dorado here in Australia, of course it used to be gold. You remember all the stories about the gold rush and the gold rushes? We had a few. Nickel. Nickel. Do you remember Poseidon? It went from a penny dreadful to a darling of the stock market, from a few cents, I think it was 7 cents, to literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars in days. And no one knew why. But, you know, everyone had to jump on the bandwagon. The nickel industry today in Australia is a basket case. Far from El Dorado. A cheap Indonesian competitor. Well, what do you expect? They don't have unions, environmental checks and balances, they have lower wages and costs, and hey, we just lost 2,000 jobs. I think it's time we woke up. We can't compete. We have so much lead, not nickel, lead in our saddlebags, we got no hope of making the finishing line. And remember, these guys in Canberra, these are the same, they're of the same political stripe as those who signed off on the infamous Lima Declaration, which divested Australia of our manufacturing industry and thousands of jobs under the Whitlam administration. And if you Google, and I've asked you to do it several times because I want as many people as possible to understand what happened. If you Google, what can you tell me about the Lima Declaration? In 5 minutes, you'll see it all in front of you. Go vote Labor after that. And I didn't make that up. I didn't put it on Google. It's there. It's history. Wine growers are complaining that they're getting 1970 prices for their 2024 crop. Well, look, if of course we could wind all prices back to 1970 levels, I mean, that would be terrific. Inflation control, absolutely. I remember 1970, my Volvo P1800 over there, I got it in 1972, I think, and it was absolutely lovely. I think it had 6,000 Ks on the clock. I paid $2,500 for it. And today, with inflation and everything else that's going on, I don't know, you couldn't buy that car for $120,000. But if we could all go back with everything and just wind the clock back and do everything at 1970 prices, it could be terrific. But of course not everyone would be happy with that, because wages weren't so hot either. Have I got any time? Okay. I think we should all stand in support and to give encouragement for Ukraine and its trouble with Russia. Well, it's more than trouble, isn't it? They're just a big bloody bully, Russia. Saturday was of course the 24th, which was the anniversary of the beginning of this terrible business. As you know, and I've said it before, Australia should give the Taipan helicopters to Ukraine instead of taking them apart and then burying them. How bloody stupid is that? You know, it's a bit like the Sea Sprite helicopter. That was another purchasing error. No one loses his job. No one goes to jail. It's quite amazing, isn't it? But I hear today that Ukraine would like us to donate the 59 Abrams tanks that we have. I believe they're American. You reckon, Pete?
Yes.
Yeah, they're American. And they've been in service for some years here in Australia. But if you'll forgive me, they've never seen action. They've never seen any action. I don't think I've ever even seen them on parade. Maybe they go and do exercises or something like that, I don't know. But there is nothing stopping them being in useful service for the next 20 years. They probably won't get much useful service here, but they've probably got 20 years life left in them. I mean, I got cars in this garage that are 50 years old, and they're perfectly wonderful. They go back 50 and more years. Nothing wrong with them. And I reckon the tanks will remain here in Australia doing I don't know what, occasionally going out on parade perhaps, but they could certainly make more use of them in Ukraine.
They're planned to be decommissioned next year.
Well, what do you do with a decommissioned tank? It's got plenty of, well, I wouldn't think it would have too many Ks on the clock. It would be a really good second-hand purchase.
The plan is to decommission them. If that's the case, they should go to the Ukraine.
I couldn't agree more. Please, let's just not scrap them. Send them to Ukraine. It would be a good cause to which we could donate them. And we're going to have to replace the Abrams tanks, even though there's nothing wrong with them. Plenty of life still left in them. As I say, not many Ks on the clock. No action seen. Anyway, I believe firmly the Defence Department is probably like about all the other departments. I'm not going on anything like personal knowledge, you understand. But I just don't think the Australian government at the moment is terribly competent. Not that it was before. I don't know. Anyway, I'll leave it there and I'll tell you about some birthdays and some anniversaries. If it's your birthday or wedding anniversary or a day that you remember for any reason at all, I hope it's a fantastic day. February the 27th. Golly, just a few days of summer left. Election, by-election on Saturday. The year is marching on. Leonard Nimoy, American actor. Mission Impossible, Star Trek. He dies at the age of 83. He was also one of the great voiceover people in America. He was highly sought after. His voice was just fantastic. But he was born in, he died in 2015 at the age of 83 on this day. The first woman's magazine, I mentioned that to you, on this day in 1693. Good God. And the Dow Jones Index suffers. I was just finishing telling you about how it was positively perky. Well, on this day in 2020, the Dow Jones Index suffers its biggest point fall in history, closing down 1,190.95 in New York amid concerns about COVID-19. Yeah. Usually takes something like that to scare the hell out of us. Swedish pop group ABBA arrives in Australia for the first time, sparking ABBA mania. The year was 1977. Were you there? Were you there, Pete?
No, I've got a feeling I went outside the Oval. I didn't see the concert or anything. I think it was Adelaide Oval. But
people rallied around the airport, all sorts of stuff. ABBA mania.
I was a huge fan.
Yeah, I liked all their music, really. It was happy and cheerful and up. Melodic, I could understand the words. Elizabeth Taylor, English actress, businesswoman, humanitarian, father of the bride, Butterfield 8, Cleopatra. 1932 was the year. She died 2011, and she was born on this day in 1932. Charles Strite, American inventor. He invented the automatic pop-up toaster. Born in America on this day in 1897. Well, I suppose somebody had to invent the automatic pop-up toaster. Then somebody came along and there were four. You put 4 slices of bread in. It's a wonderfully inventive world, isn't it? Barbara Streisand reveals that she has cloned her dog twice. You'd only have to do it once, wouldn't you? 2018 was the year. Oh, the lovely Spike Milligan. I used to love talking with him. Irish-British actor and comedian. Well, they say Irish-British. I thought he was born in Woy Woy. He always told me he was born in Woy Woy and his mother lived in Woy Woy in New South Wales. Do you hear that?
I'm pretty sure he was born in Australia.
I'm pretty sure he was born in Australia too. But it says here, Irish-British actor and comedian. The Goon Show, The Three Musketeers, dies of kidney failure at 83, 2002. 83 seems to be a popular age at which we die. I don't know. I'm in no hurry, ladies and gentlemen. The 22nd Amendment ratifies limiting US presidents to two terms. 1951, if they had their way, they'd go back and ratify that amendment.
Make it one term.
Make it one term. Oh, they are going to be, when Donald wins, they are going to be so angry. I tell you what, the Democrats will be storming Capitol Hill. And it'll all start again. Gee whiz. And one more. Louis Vuitton, French founder of the Louis Vuitton brand of leather goods, now owned by LVMH. Oh yeah, they were the people who bought our Bush Outfitters.
Hiram Williams?
Hiram Williams, yeah. But that's now been bought back. And that's in Australian hands. Twiggy Forrest bought that back.
That's right. Yeah.
That's good. That's good. 1892, Louis Vuitton dies on this day at the age of 70. In actual fact, I was down at Small Woodfields the other day, and I was totally amazed to see a most beautiful Louis Vuitton travelling trunk. Really big thing too, but very recognisable as the Louis Vuitton because of the logo thing. It's all sort of engraved into their leather work. I don't know what it goes for, but I noticed that it would have to be 150 years old. Anyway, the things you see. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for viewing the Court of Public Opinion. Pete and I will be back tomorrow. Believe in yourself. Thank you for viewing, and we'll see you soon. Bye for now.